Well, it's going to be an interesting one today, folks. Ford v. Ferrari and The Irishman. We're doing another double review, but we got to get through Ford v. Ferrari fast because I got a lot to say about The Irishman. So Ford v. Ferrari, 1, 2, 3, here we go. Ford v. Ferrari, it's an awesome racing movie. It's going to tick all the boxes. The sound mixing, the sound editing, the cinematography, the direction, they should all be nominated for an Oscar. There's so much technical quality to this film. All the racing scenes are coherent, concise, super entertaining, immersive, intense. I was biting my nails during this film, which I always thought to be a hyperbolic statement, but I was literally doing it because of how well shot the scenes were. The set pieces really do deliver. It really, it feels like there was a great amount of love behind the cars and just racing movies in general here, and it's felt through the quality of those scenes. But of course, those scenes wouldn't work if you didn't have a compelling story, and there is a compelling story behind this, and it's about Carroll Shelby, played by Matt Damon, and Ken Miles, played by Christian Bale, against Ford. This film isn't Ford v. Ferrari. It's Shelby and Miles versus Ford. It's about two guys who love their job, who are really passionate about cars against the money-grubbing executives at Ford. And that's compelling. There's nothing too complex about it here, and the writing isn't right where it should be. It doesn't elevate the story to any, next level, but it does its job. And after all the crazy shit I've seen this year with The Lighthouse and Midsommar, I'm okay that it does its job. This is just a solid movie with solid performances, solid directing, solid writing, The couple subplots don't work as well as they should. Miles and his son, kind of lame. The subplot with Ford and Ferrari and their actual rivalry isn't as good as the Shelby and Miles stuff. But there's nothing here that I can really dock. There's nothing where I'm like, this really, I really don't like this about the film, yada, yada, yada. It's just solid. It's a really solid film, and I'd probably give it an 8.5 out of 10. The racing scenes do what they need to, and so does the story. I'd like to talk about it more during award season, but now we got to talk about The Irishman. Now, I want to say this. The Irishman's a good film. I know that's going to get spun into that. I think it's the worst thing ever, but I don't. I think it's a good movie. However, this is undoubtedly the most disappointed I've been from a movie in a long, long time. And, it's still solid because it's Scorsese. Of course it's still fine. It's 3 hours of solid filmmaking. I said 3, not 3.5. I know the runtime. Because the last half an hour, in many ways, proves how ineffective Scorsese is in this film. A lot of the journalists and, people reviewing this movie, the critics, they talk about age, that, growing old and how it's such a big part of The Irishman and the theme of the film. But this theme is only highlighted in the last 30 minutes. There's nothing in this film that has any sort of theme or depth to it until the last 30 minutes. And because you're so exhausted after 3 hours of plot threads all moving together, it has no effect. The last 30 minutes, it was when I realized that Scorsese took a huge step off of the cliff into some netherworld of piss directing, because this film feels like it has nothing to it. There's no extra thing it can offer me that Goodfellas or Casino or Wolf or Departed hasn't been before, because there's nothing to the characters. Frank Sheeran is a character that has no depth. He's, the every guy, I'm going to get the job done. I'm following orders, There's nothing to him. The most you can say about him is that, he has this thing with his daughter where his daughter doesn't really like him because, he's violent, but you never see the pain that he's in. Besides one shot where, it's so evident that Scorsese knew that he didn't give enough to that subplot that he has to focus on Robert De Niro for like 30 seconds staring at his daughter sadly, because he thinks that that'll make up for the amount of time he didn't spend on the subplot. But I saw through it because I've seen Scorsese and other people have seen Scorsese, and I think that they should call out what he's done here, because he's oversimplified everything. Everything in this film feels basic. The entirety of the supporting cast feels like they offer nothing that hasn't been given through Goodfellas or Casino or any of the mafia movies since Scorsese revolutionized it in 1990. There's nothing special to this film, and I think a huge part of that comes from the writing. The writing is horrible. It's the same subtext Italian mob mafia shit that we've seen for the past 30-some years, and it's just not good. I can't put it simpler than that. It's extremely repetitive and boring, and it's not going to kill the movie. You're not going to want to turn it off. But I say that it's bad and that it's shit because I know what Scorsese and his previous writers have been capable of, and it's way better than this. This is a film where it feels like there's such an intense amount of pressure on the actors to give depth because there's nothing there through the writing. And the actors have to deliver their lines. They have to keep the plot along, so they can't add any depth, and then you're just left with a shallow experience. The writing is so bad that at one point, Robert De Niro has to explain the subtext used in the film, because I guess there's this expectation that the audience is not going to understand the subtext, because the audience must be so stupid because they only like superhero films, right? Scorsese feels disconnected from the audience. He talks so much about, how modern cinema is so bad and why, we have these amusement park movies, but he doesn't understand that he essentially crafted an amusement park movie because there's no emotion here. There's no extra thing that I should feel particularly invested in. Granted, Al Pacino acts his ass off, gives a lot of pathos to his character. I actually feel as though that I care about him, and it was actually pretty damn upsetting when he, ended up dying, because I really enjoyed him. I enjoyed what he brought to the movie. I understood why people didn't like him. I understood why he was beloved. I understood why he was such a great speaker because of how dramatic Pacino played him. And that is an overacting performance, but it's one that works. And, a lot of Scorsese is about excess. It's about so much. And it's why his movies have been so long, because there's so much to cover. But he doesn't capitalize on the excess here. The film's editing is bad. And I know that everyone's going to want, this to be nominated and won because it would be a record for this woman, because she's historically a great editor. But she does nothing for this film. Not only does it feel like I've watched this movie before because of how familiar the editing is, but it doesn't make, full use of the editing. It just doesn't do anything special with it. There's no particularly cuts or choices here that makes it feel particularly impactful. Whereas other films like Parasite, I feel the effect every single cut and every single choice that's made. This goes for the cinematography as well. It's nothing special here. This goes for, as I've said, the performances. There's just nothing to this movie. It's 3 hours of something that you've seen before. And I wish that I could elaborate on it more, but I don't want to give away the whole plot. And I don't want to belabor the fact that, this movie is shallow. And it is, but I can't keep on saying that for 5 more minutes. This movie shows the inexperience that Scorsese has with this new, I don't even know if inexperience is the right word, but he doesn't feel like he's attached to anyone. He doesn't feel like he's trying to give anything to the audience. It's like he's telling the same story that he's just wanted to tell for 30 years, but he doesn't have the skill of a younger Scorsese to tell it. He has this interesting story, and it's interesting in and of itself, and that helps plug along any problems that you might have with the film, because you're invested, because it's just an interesting story of, Jimmy Hoffa and the mob and, the Kennedys and what's going on here, but there's nothing extra here. The writing is bad. The cinematography and the editing offer nothing. Pacino is really the only performance that's outstanding here. It's just nothing that I can take away. It's something that you've seen before from Scorsese, but done worse, and done in a longer manner that you're not going to want to spend time in, because there's no time. There's no time for anything. I want to close off this review by saying something about Scorsese and, his comments on the Marvel movies, because I never got to say anything about that. Never got to say, Scorsese and the Marvel films, and here's my opinion, and blah, blah, blah. Scorsese says that Marvel films aren't cinema, but after watching a film like Endgame this year, it's proved to me that it's more cinema than he could ever offer in this film, because the amount of profound emotions, the amount of attachment I had for those characters, and what I felt during that film, and the smiles and the tears and the jeers and the cheers and everything that I felt during that film, even the flaws, I felt really pissed off about, because I knew that I love these characters so much, and I wanted to be so satisfied by that. I was actually pissed off more than I have ever been in a movie for being bad at certain parts, because I had such a deep love for Marvel and what they have done. And what Scorsese did here is gave the exact opposite, where I really didn't care where the film was going. I didn't care whether it was good or bad, because there's no soul to this movie. It's just plot and plot and plot, and that's it. And the plot's fine, and I'm going to say, movie's a solid 7. It's a good movie. It's a good, good time. I watch it once, I'm fine with that. But I think that a lot of my frustration comes from, the amount of disappointment I felt with Scorsese, and the fact that he trashes these Marvel movies and yet has no cinema and no soul in his own movie. There's nothing I can feel during this film. There's nothing that proves to me why I should be angry that, Marvel is ruining the whole business. This is just a lame attempt at Scorsese to make a statement, to make a last, hurrah to the gangster film. It's just the worst possible scenario that I could have for this film. Not even that it's bad, but it's just the most underwhelming of the year. Thanks you so much for watching, and see you all next time.